Hello all and welcome to the Game Recommender channel. If you've seen my introduction video, the first ever video on the channel, then you'll know that I'm a big fan of platformers and I prefer indie games to AAA games. With that knowledge, I think that it wouldn't be a surprise to anyone that my favourite genre of games are indie platformers. For those who don't know what an indie platformer is, it's pretty much just a platformer that's been designed by one person or a small group of people. I've played a lot of indie platformers in my lifetime, some being better than others, and today I hope to recommend the very best. Now let's begin. First up is a game that I don't see a lot of people talking about, known as Off and On Again. To be fair, this game is fairly new, but it's definitely an underappreciated hidden gem of a game. It sees you as this man who I'll call Legs because that's what this little pixel called Globe calls you. In the beginning, Globe acts as a little tutorial guide, I guess you could say. Plus, every time you die, he'd always say something positive like don't give up. However, as the game progresses, he becomes straight up evil and chuckles every time you die and wishes pain upon you. And why is this? Well, you play as the hero who is sent to reboot a system that's been taken over by a virus, the hero being Legs. I haven't finished the game yet, so I'm not sure why Globe gets so evil, but I'm sure it has something to do with the virus. Gameplay-wise, I think the game handles platforming very well. Each level is progressively harder, new gimmicks are introduced throughout the game to keep it fresh, and the levels did a really good job of keeping me hooked on the game, even if they didn't last that long. If you're looking for a challenging platformer, and you're also into games that tell stories in a unique way, then I'd recommend Off and On Again. It's available on Xbox Series X and X, Xbox One, PS4 and PS5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now let's say you're looking for something that doesn't cost too much. Enter Toree 3D and Toree 2, two games that only cost you 79p here in Britain and only $1 in America. Pretty much, the whole deal with these two games is that they're low-budget indie platformers that set out to replicate the style of an N64 game, which is quite clear by the graphics. They both provide an exciting but short experience. There's also a lot to do in both games other than beat the levels. You can collect all the stars scattered around the levels to unlock a bonus character, you can gain ranks on levels by beating them in a certain amount of time, and in Toree 2, you can collect these CDs and that'll give you yet another bonus character. Toree 2 does have a few new gimmicks that Toree 3D didn't have, and even adds a boss fight into the game, which is something the first game didn't have, but I honestly prefer Toree 3D. I think it's just more memorable to me, and its simpleness just makes it such a fantastic time. If you're into platformers and don't really have much money, then give Toree 3D and Toree 2 a try. They're both available on Nintendo Switch and PC. Coming up next is another pair of games, but these two games I hold very close to my heart, for my own reasons. Dadish 1 and Dadish 2 are 2D pixel platformers where you play as Dadish, a dad who just so happens to also be a radish, as you look for your missing children. You'll also be jumping and double jumping throughout various unique worlds. Each level also has a star hidden in them, and collecting all of them will give you access to a new character. In Dadish 1, you get to play as the Possum, who's a recurring character in both games. He doesn't actually have a new moveset though, unfortunately. He's just a reskin of Dadish. But then in Dadish 2, you get to play as Super Faust, a renegade chicken from another one of the developers' games called, well, Super Faust. He has a completely different moveset to Dadish. In fact, he uses his moveset from his own game, which I thought was cool because it didn't just make him a reskin, but his moveset made some of the levels literally impossible. Not only does Dadish handle gameplay well, but it's also quite a humorous game. After you find each child at the end of the shorter levels, there'll be some dialogue between them and Dadish, and some of these conversations actually made me chuckle sometimes. Its characters too are just so memorable, but Burgerger is superior. He is the best character in the Dadish series. Not only that, but the stage gimmicks that are introduced just keep the game so fresh. There's a lot more I could say about this game, but that would probably make a full-blown video in itself, so I'm just going to leave it here. If you're looking for a 2D platformer with pixel art, and you're also up for some humour along the way, then give Dadish 1 and Dadish 2 a shot. They're both available on Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, PC, and even mobile devices. Do you like Halloween by any chance? Well, these next two games are both Halloween themed, so if you're into games with a spooky atmosphere, then I'd suggest buying these two games. The first game I'll mention is Savage Halloween. Savage Halloween is a 2D pixel platformer with a spooky Halloween setting. In this game, you get to play as three characters: James the Pumpkin, Lulu the Werewolf, and Dominica the Vampire. These characters don't really have any difference to them other than their special attack. And yes, I did say attack. Unlike the other games I've mentioned, you can indeed attack enemies in this game. Your main weapon is a gun, and what I think is cool about this is that you can gain different power-ups to gain ammo for a different type of gun, like a spread shotgun or a gun that'll shoot out explosive rubber chickens. That sounds really weird. There's 7 levels in total, each being pretty long and each including a boss battle at the end. Sometimes levels will even have a mini-boss in them. Also, if you find that the game is a little too easy for you, then there is a hardcore mode, which is unbeatable for someone like me. If you're looking for a 2D pixel platformer and like a good old spooky theme, then I'd suggest giving Savage Halloween a go. It's available for Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now it's time for the other Halloween-themed game, which may I add is a personal favourite of mine. Pumpkin Jack is a Halloween-themed 3D platformer, which sees you as Pumpkin Jack, who is tasked with defeating the wizard by the devil himself. What I think is interesting about this game is that you're the bad guy. The wizard the devil wants you to take down is just trying to defend everyone from the havoc that the devil has brought onto their world. There's 7 levels in total, each of them being quite long and interesting. You'll be travelling through places like swamps and graveyards, which I think is just a really cool idea for a Halloween game. In each level, there'll be hidden crow heads that you'll need to get if you want to get different costumes for Jack, which all look really cool. You can also find gramophones that'll make Jack start dancing. I don't know what the point of these are, but they're wonderful. Truly wonderful. The game also has quite an interesting story that I'm sure people will like. The bosses here too, not only cool, but also do a good job of testing you on everything you've learnt in the game. In general, Pumpkin Jack is just a really spot-on platformer, and the Halloween theming of this game just makes it all the more better. If you're looking for your next 3D platformer but like Halloween-themed games, then this might just be the game for you. It's available on Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, PS4 and PS5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Up next, I have yet another personal favourite of mine, Arise a Simple Story. The art style here is absolutely gorgeous. It's so simple but effective at the same time. Arise a Simple Story is pretty much the retelling of a simple man's life through a 3D platformer. The most interesting thing about this game though is its gimmick of moving time. By moving the left joystick left and right, you're able to control time. The game handles this gimmick just so well, and it honestly just makes this game so much better than it already was. You'll mostly just be using this ability for things like moving objects towards you, but there are some other pretty interesting things with it, like moving light to disintegrate these shadow demons that show up later in the game. I do have to credit the game for telling such a good story with no words at all, only cutscenes and pictures that you can gain by collecting weird light things that are hidden in the levels. You can quite clearly see how the old man, the person you play as, is feeling at all times, and he doesn't even have a face. I will say though that before you buy it, that this game is quite a sad one and can be downright depressing at times. It deals with themes of death, miscarriages, and it still remains the only game to this day that has made me shed a tear. If you're looking for a 3D platformer but you want it to have some sort of unique gimmick, then check out Arise a Simple Story. Just be warned that it deals with sensitive topics. It's available for Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch and PC. Moving on to something a little more light-hearted is Mail Mole. Mail Mole is yet another 3D platformer where you play as Multi the Mail Mole, who has to deliver reset codes to stations to get the power back in Peaceful Plaza after it was stolen. Everything about this game just screams charming, to its looks, to its stages. I don't even know where to start with this game. Well, let's start with its looks. Mail Mo goes for a low poly art style which makes the game stand out better to me personally. This is yet another platformer that implements a gimmick, but this time the gimmick is burrowing underground, which is how you'll be moving in the game. This gives Multi a completely different moveset to platformers, and you won't even be able to see Multi when he's burrowing, just a pile of dirt. The stages, I'd say, are fine. There are some truly interesting ones here, like the ancient ruins and the spooky swamp, but then you've got your generic boring platformer worlds, like your intro plains world, sunny beach world, snow world, etc. The hub world, though, is amazing and packed with things to do. You can trade in carrots and radishes, which you'll find in the levels of the worlds, with this raccoon to buy a new cosmetic upgrade for Multi, or you can even race robot modes called mecha modes after you've beaten all the stages of a world. If you're looking for a 3D platformer but, yet again, want it to have some sort of unique gimmick, then I'd recommend Mail Mo. It's available for Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch and PC. Let's say you're looking for something bigger with way more challenge. Well, that's what this last couple of games are all about. And starting off with these games, we have Super Meat Boy. I'm sure at least some of you have heard of Super Meat Boy and know it for being a brutally hard platformer. Super Meat Boy sees you as Meat Boy, who has to rescue his girlfriend Bandage Girl from the evil Dr. Fetus by platforming through simple but brutally hard cartoonist 2D stages. There's not really a lot I can say about Super Meat Boy other than it's hard. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good game, it's just a very bare bones 2D platformer. There are these portals you can find that'll take you to these warp zones that'll give you 3 retro style levels to do, and I did think they were pretty cool, especially when you were playing as Commander Video from the Runner series. You can also play in the Dark World, which you can only do if you beat the levels and get a grade A+ as your ranking. The Dark World levels are essentially just harder versions of the levels, not much more than that. If you're looking for a brutally hard, bare-bones 2D platformer, then I'd consider giving Super Meat Boy a try. It's available for Xbox 360, PS4, PlayStation Vita, Nintendo Wii, Nintendo Wii U, Nintendo Switch, and PC. From one brutally hard platformer to another, we have Celeste. I definitely like this game way more than Super Meat Boy, but that's probably just because it has a story that relates very close to me. Celeste is a platformer that sees you as a girl called Madeline, who struggles with things like depression and panic attacks. With this, she decides to go climb Celeste Mountain, which turns out to have mystical powers that can turn her depression into a living person that goes on to be the main antagonist of the game. Celeste has a really beautiful pixel art style, and it makes the game just look so good. Celeste is made up of 7 chapters and brutally hard platforming challenges. I think what really kept me playing this game was both the story and the motivational messages that would pop up after I died. You see, each time you die in the game, you're given messages like don't give up and stuff like that. So a bit like Off and On again, but this lasts for the entire game. If you're looking for a brutally hard 2D pixel platformer, then Celeste might just be for you. Just be warned that it deals with things like anxiety and panic attacks. It's available for Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now, I'm about to get into my personal favourites. Starting off, we have Shovel Knight Treasure Trove. Shovel Knight is a 2D pixel platformer where you play as Shovel Knight and are tasked with saving the world from the evil Enchantress. The levels here are quite long and always finish with a boss fight, which I think is what the game shines in. Each knight you face is memorable either for their personality or battle itself. Now, not only does Shovel Knight Treasure Trove come with Shovel of Hope, the main campaign of the game, but it also comes along with 3 DLCs where you get to play as one of the bosses. There's Plague of Shadows where you play as Plague Knight, who mostly just throws bombs. This is my least favourite campaign of the game. We have my personal favourite campaign out of them all, Spectre of Torment, which sees you playing as Spectre Knight in a prequel to Shovel of Hope, and then there's King of Cards, where you play as King Knight. You're given short little stages here, completely different to all the other campaigns, and there's even a little card game introduced. Now all we need is a DLC on Tinker Knight, and then it'll truly be the best game ever. There's a lot more I could say about how wonderful these games are, but I think I should just let you guys do that yourself. It'll make it a lot better if you didn't know, trust me. If you're looking for a 2D pixel platformer, and you like a good story to go along with it, then I'd definitely recommend this game. It's available for Xbox One, PS3 and PS4, PlayStation Vita, Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo Wii U, Nintendo Switch and PC. We've talked about a lot of indie platformers today, all being different in some sort of way. We've had platformers that were brutally hard, platformers that had unique gimmicks, and even Halloween-themed platformers. But what indie platformer can I truly crown the king of all indie platformers? Well, let's check out my final game on this list, what I think is the best indie platformer of all time. I sometimes forget that Sonic Mania Plus is an indie game, just due to how much of a good game it is. To those of you who don't know, Sonic Mania Plus is the result of Sega letting a bunch of indie developers go wild with a Sonic game, and this is what they made. A lot of people crown this the best Sonic game of all time, and I think that really says something. Sonic Mania Plus is a pixelated 2D platformer where you platform through a bunch of interesting stages and go really fast whilst doing so. Everything about this game is just so excellent, to its wonderfully designed stages, amazing bosses, and unique characters you get to play as. And yes, you can actually play as 5 different characters throughout the whole game, these being Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Mighty, and Ray, each of them having a unique ability which I think is really cool. There's even a whole other mode here called Encore Mode, which is pretty much where you play through the game but you collect the characters instead of lives. When you die as that character, you can't get it back, so you're going to have to find it again, which I think is a really fun game mode. Not only that, but the game looks so beautiful. This is probably the best pixel art I've seen in a long time. Look. I could make a full video on Sonic Mania, saying how good it is, but with a video like this, I have to keep it short, so I'm gonna leave it here. If you're looking for a bare bones 2D platformer with pixel art and you're into Sonic, yeah, check this one out. It's available on Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. That is the end of the video. If you're still watching, then thanks. If you have any indie platformers you like but I haven't mentioned them, then feel free to type it down in the comments below. Oh, and please like and subscribe. It really helps me and the channel, and your support is always appreciated. Goodbye, and I hope to see you in the next video.